like what we see in China, which means less of a democratic approach. There you can see, okay, what are some of the benefits of that, and the speed at which China responded, the speed at which things happened, and just like the overall success that I saw with my own eyes. Like, you can't deny that. And it's like in economics, we always talk about you have trade-offs. Nothing in life that we have is going to come without cost. So I don't want to get into too much of the politics over here as far as China goes, but there are definitely
They're going to cut off your internet.
Hello, all those beautiful faces. How we doing? Stephanie checking in with another episode of Class Disruption. And today we're going to be talking with an educator from China. But before we get into it, it's the beginning of a new school year, and I'm going to ask you could be so kind as to donate $1 or $2 towards the work my students do in our classroom. Link is in the description down below. You can do it through PayPal or through Cash App, and you can follow all of our adventures on Instagram at Making History with Miss Edmonds, or I also put up a website, and we're going to be updating the blog there throughout the year, and that's MakingHistoryInc.org. Again, all those links are in the description down below. And of course, I'm gonna need for you to like this video. If you're new here, welcome. I love your beautiful face. Hit that subscribe button and that bell so you get notified every time I drop a video. And you know, we still in summer mode, so I have a lot of time to really dive in deep and look into different issues around policy, current news, and just having awesome conversations. So let me know in those comments down below any topics that I should cover, any people who I should be conversating with. If you want to come on and share what you're doing in your classroom, I would love to have you. But with that being said, let's introduce today's guest, Elizabeth, known on Instagram as Lessons from a Lotus. She's also sometimes featured on the YouTube channel 7 in All. Her family is not only the cutest, but they give such a good look into what at-home learning and homeschooling can look like, the adventures that learning can be. So definitely go check them out. All those links are in the description down below. But like I said, Elizabeth is teaching at an international school in China, and since China is a few months ahead of us in the whole curve of the pandemic, it's like we're going to get a little look into the future. What is it like to go back to school? What are the protocols like? And just another viewpoint of how a country is dealing with this pandemic, and what her viewpoint is of America from the outside dealing with this pandemic. So we're gonna get a lot of great perspective here, and I just really like the way that her mind balances it out, because she's an economics teacher. So she's always thinking about the cost and the benefit, and I think that's a very important framework for really understanding and assessing the risks of the virus as we head back into schools. So without any further ado, let's get into this conversation.
All right, Elizabeth, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm loving the feel of being like right here, but we are across the world. We are 12 hours apart. So you're like exactly like down there.
Yep. You can see me on the globe, actually, right behind you.
Oh yeah, I should like move it to your part of the world right here. Yeah. And where exactly? I mean, you know, China is like a big place. Like, where are you exactly?
Okay, so we are not too far from Shenzhen. We're kind of on the coast. Our little area is actually called Park Lane Harbor, which doesn't sound very Chinese.
I was gonna say.
It's in the province is Huizhou. So if you're like me, you probably don't know where any of those things were. I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna pop up like a little map up here for everybody who's listening while you're saying that, so they'll be like, "Oh yeah, geography, got it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right, awesome. And so I brought you back on here because you know you've helped me out with some class disruption stuff before, way back. You know, it seems like it's 6 years ago, but it's only 6 months ago. In March, when this whole COVID-19 thing, you know, really took off in the United States,
Mhm.
but over in China, at that point, you have been dealing with it for some time.
Mhm.
And so I was like, hey, can you just like give people some perspective? What's going on?
Mhm.
So, you know, before we get into it, we got, you know, you're in China, but just give us a little bit more background. Like, what are you doing in China? Who are you? What are you all
Mhm.
about?
So I'm Elizabeth Lotus from Lessons from a Lotus on Instagram and occasionally 7 and All here on YouTube. But right now, me and my husband are teaching in China. This is our first year teaching in China. Before that, we were teachers at public charter schools in Arizona, and we taught there for a while. So we've learned a lot. Like, this was a crazy year to move to China. Like, overall, it's just been amazing. We've learned so much. It's been an amazing experience, but definitely a crazy one for sure. I teach economics, AP economics, and then 8th grade economics, and then my husband teaches biology. So I would say for me, I always think about things in terms of economics and biology. So those are kind of my biases, I would say. Everything has to do with economics. Everything has to do with biology.
There's no free lunch, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, well, between you and seeing your stuff on Instagram, and then, you know, I get your family stuff on YouTube, which, by the way, makes me feel like so wholesome, and there's like a chance for me in life. Like, if I could just like join your family for a day, like maybe there'd be a spot for me up in heaven somewhere.
You should
Loving
go
the
and visit
content.
us. Yeah, like my family lives in Penang, Malaysia. So like if you ever get a chance, you should just come on down, check it out, meet the whole fam. It will be amazing.
I didn't realize I did not realize they were in Malaysia. Did I miss that, or am I just like?
I don't think it's something they usually like say on YouTube every time. They try to keep it, you know, we're in Southeast
Yeah.
Asia, they usually say, but yeah, that's
Okay.
where they are.
All right, well, when we get back to it, that's definitely going to be one of my stops.
Mm.
So, I was hoping that you, since now again, like China's, I guess like ahead of the curve on this, because they've been experiencing thing 1 or 2 months ahead of us. So I was just wondering if you could give us kind of like everything from how does it look from the beginning till now, what are you expecting going back, and then I mean you're in China, but you know what it's like in the United States, and you're kind of seeing it from the outside. So like, what do you see as the differences and the similarities in how we handled it?
Right. Okay, so that's a lot.
I know, so
Um,
much there.
I
Sorry.
do feel like I'm living in the future because China was the one that really got it first, and really China was the one, the country that had it bad first, that really got through it first. So from the future, I just want to say that things will get better and this too shall pass. So from the very beginning, actually, things started to unfold during Chinese New Year break, and I wasn't actually in China. We were traveling, visiting my family. And so that was an interesting time because things were crazy. The CDC was saying China is really bad, don't go to China. And we had our flights scheduled to go back at the end of the Chinese New Year break, and we had to talk about it and think about, is this safe? Should we go back? If we go back, are we going to get quarantined? It was a really bad situation and just really scary as a foreigner, an illiterate foreigner who, if I did get sick, I wasn't scared about dying because I'm young, I'm healthy. I was mostly scared about, I don't know, I can't talk to the doctors, I
Right.
can't get around, like, and that's on me for not being able to read and speak Mandarin, but still it complicates it, especially for us as foreigners living in China. Thankfully, our school allowed us and they let us know that we were going to move to fully online teaching for a little bit, like just until things calm down. Because this whole time, this whole thing, we've always been thinking like, oh, it's going to just be like a week or 2 or 2 weeks. And then it ended up being way longer than that. But and so we were able to basically camp out in Malaysia for a while, and our school moved to totally online teaching, but just through Schoology. So we didn't actually have video lessons because this was supposed to be a very short term kind of fix. Everything was going to get back to normal.
Right.
And that was, I think, a kind of a crazy time because very scary in a lot of ways, but there's still a lot of positives. For example, there's a lot of technology kinds of things that I've been interested in, but I never really checked it out. I never really had time to implement it. And this was a time where I got to learn how to figure it out, even something just as simple as Schoology, just like a digital platform to use for the class. And then also I got to spend extra time with my family. And I think that's something that I've been seeing other people through Instagram in the States and different things, to spend more time with their kids, with their family. And I'm just like, I hope that people realize how precious this is. Even with all the horrible things that are going on, COVID is not a good thing, but there are certain things that are like fun, you know? So we got to spend more time with my family, and then there came a point where really things in China started to get better. They weren't better yet, but we could see that things were calming down, and our school was also, they were telling us all the things they were going to do to keep us safe. So we live on campus, so we really could be in a little bubble, and they were going to be giving us food from the cafeteria every day. They would actually go and pick us up from the airport, so we didn't have to even go on public transportation. And so me and my husband basically said, okay, we can go back to China. I don't think we're going to get sick. We're gonna also, our school said we're gonna start doing like Zoom lessons, like live, hour by hour lessons. And it was just gonna be really hard to do that from like our little camp out in Malaysia without any of our resources, any of our stuff at all. So we decided to go back to China, and our school took really good care of us, make sure we're safe. They gave us masks, they gave us food.
So let me just ask a question about like your school and like your population of students. You know, for example, like in New York City, I had, you know, it was the epicenter in the United States. I mean, it's gone, the hotspots have gone different places now, but, you know, we just had a lot of kids who had family members who passed away or who got sick. Was that something that was experienced among your school population, or to what extent? Because you are saying like you have kind of your own little bubble, but I'm sure the kids, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, we definitely were not near the epicenter, for sure. And we had, as far as like I know, there wasn't anyone super directly affected, like people who passed away super directly with students and staff at the school, as far as like immediate family members. But I do know, I pretty much, I think at this point, the pandemic is so widespread in the States and in China, it affected a lot of people. Everyone kind of knows someone at a couple like layers away. So it was very real. Like you knew someone, probably not close to you, like in your immediate family, but you knew someone who it was directly affected. And we also had staff and a couple members of our school in Wuhan, which is like the really bad area. And so even though most everyone was quite far away, it was a difficult conversation to have about like, okay, well, all of these people, they might be able to come back, but what about these other people who are in super lockdown? When are they going to be able to return?
And so they were in Wuhan just like because it was the break, and so it's like a big city, and they went to be in the city? Did you hear me? Okay.
Okay, I think, yeah, it was a bit frozen. Yeah, since it was Chinese New Year break, we were all traveling all over the place.
And some lucky people just happened to be traveling to the great city of Wuhan in the middle of the outbreak. Dang, that's so unfortunate. And did they know how to speak Mandarin, or were they also from abroad?
They pretty much are, all our students are Chinese and Mandarin speakers. So yeah. And
okay, they were students.
Right, yeah.
Okay. I was saying if it was like other international teachers, that would be,
Right.
I mean,
It would
obviously
be,
even harder. Yeah, crazy.
yeah.
All right, so you guys are coming back, your school's taking care of you. You have a somewhat of a unique situation. I mean, at least to like the more city or suburb schools, I would say like there's some rural places that seem like it's more contained. But
Right.
tell us about what were some of the things that they did as more precautions on
Right.
campus.
So, like for right now in the story, we just started doing Zoom lessons, so we weren't actually all coming together. And on campus, we weren't supposed to really be hanging out with our friends, and they were giving us food in the cafeteria, but we had to go and like take the food and bring it back to our apartments. We weren't supposed to eat in the cafeteria. And so with the Zoom thing, what I wanted to say is we actually had really good participation from our students, and I was really surprised by that. I pretty much had everyone in my class every day, and part of the reason for that, I think, is just a cultural thing. The students and parents here, what I've noticed is they're very focused on the education and they value it a lot. And then also the school took staff that usually would have other jobs and really pivoted them to be what we called like learning expert teachers that weren't the subject teachers, but they would pop in, see if anyone wasn't there, and then go call them up and like get them into the class. So like we really used the resources we had, even though that wasn't their normal job, to kind of like deal with this situation and help out.
I
But
like both. I like both of those things. I'm actually just reading right now in the US, there's a big divide because like private schools really went with like more of a mimicking of the school day versus public schools.
Mhm.
And then also I know that like you said, they had people shift their job description, and again like a lot of the union structures make that hard. There are some states that don't have the unions and it's easier for them to do that, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of
Mhm.
pushback on those two things, which I think make a whole lot of sense.
Right, yeah, and I can see it from both sides. Like, I'm an econ teacher because I love economics, and every year when the schedules come out and they put me on other social studies classes, I'm like, that's not economics, but it's kind of like in this situation, we all got to help out, like you got to kind of do some things you might not be used to doing. And as long as it's not too much, like I do think sometimes people put too much on teachers just because it's like, come on for the kids, and I don't think that's healthy. But if you can pivot to kind of help with this crazy time, I think it's what really helped. And so then we had a very long time where we were teaching on Zoom and we never knew when it was going to end. That was a tough part because planning
Mm.
wise, like you said in one of your recent videos, the way you plan for having like a totally online class versus like synchronous Zoom versus in-person versus mixed, the planning is totally different. So it was tough as far as a teacher to know like, okay, what should I just buckle down and decide we're going to have like 4 more weeks of Zoom class and this is how we're going to do it? Or, okay, they're coming back on Monday. That was tough, but of course, there's nothing that we could do about it. It wasn't our decision. It wasn't our school's decision. It was the government's decision. So that was a little bit tough planning wise. And then finally, when we were able to get the kids back in, the school day did look different. We had to keep the students like separated. Everyone had to wear masks. As far as the canteen, the cafeteria, we had dividers all over the table. So
I
everyone
remember
had
when you posted a picture of that. Yeah, and it has like directions on it.
yes, how to eat. You gotta like take off your mask, put it down, fold it. Like it was very cute. All the little like graphics they gave. But I remember kind of getting into a conversation with one of my friends on Facebook because she shared this, something that had all these pictures from China, definitely looked like from China, of this like really like scary type look of like social distancing. And you've probably seen these with like the kids like in these like crazy suits with their like plastic and like everyone's like sitting like super straight and like I admit they look scary. But I guess what I just have to say is like I lived in China through this. It really wasn't that bad. And after going through such a long time without seeing my students, you don't care if you have to wear a mask. You don't care if you have to like eat lunch and you don't get to sit all with your friends. Like, it's a very, very small price to pay to be able to do what we did and keep everyone safe. And I do think like the first time you experience something like that, where when we flew back to China, we were all wearing masks in the airport and everyone was wearing masks and some of the people were like all suited up. That was a little bit scary because it's like, whoa, I've never seen this. What's happening? Like, is this a good decision? Am I like ruining my life right now? Like, should I do this? That was scary, but it's not like that when you're at your school. You know those kids. You're not in a room full of strangers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I guess with that, I just want to say, like, sometimes I see this rhetoric that's like, if kids have to wear masks, I'm not sending my kid to school.
Right.
I don't really know that is, it's really not that bad. Like, I lived through it. It's okay. It's not fun to eat lunch by yourself every day, but like, it's 15 minutes, you know? It's actually kind of nice to have some like peaceful time and then you go back.
I know teachers, well, I don't know if they're going to be able to reclaim their lunchtime because like we don't have a cafeteria. I don't know how they would set it up. They're talking about lunches in the rooms. So I don't know if teachers are going to reclaim their lunchtime, but at least the kids will be quiet.
I think so much of this is like logistics, like logistically.
Yeah.
How would you do it? Because every school is different. You have different funding, you have different stuff, you have different students, different buildings. That's the really tough part for the United States, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Like, especially too, I see the difference between small charter schools or small private schools that really have the autonomy to make those decisions for themselves, and they really have a good close connection with their families that they're serving, versus New York City that's trying to do this for 1,800 different schools, and each school is so different. And then also there's a lot of like it doesn't seem like anybody really wants to take the blame, and like I don't blame them. Like, who wants to be blamed for when there's like an outbreak at your school, or when you have to like call into place those protocols because somebody, comes in with over 100 fever or something, and nobody wants to be that principal, and they want to pass the buck up to Central, and Central's like, well, but you guys gotta. So it's this whole thing is playing out. But is there any kind of like politics like that over there, or is it just because of like the government structure, or like even maybe more on like the school level?
So what I would say is that's like in general, that's the biggest difference from what I've seen. United States versus China. Like you were saying, there's actually, in a previous video, you were saying like, really, you have 50 different pandemics and 50 different responses. And by virtue of the federalist system that we have and the democracy that we have in the United States, we're not going to be unified, and that's kind of the point. There's a lot of benefits to that, but in this specific type of instance, when we have a more unified approach, like what we see in China, which means less of a democratic approach, you can see, okay, what are some of the benefits of that, and the speed at which China responded, the speed at which things happened, and just like the overall success that I saw with my own eyes. Like, you can't deny that. And it's like in economics, we always talk about, you have trade-offs. Nothing in life that we have is going to come without cost. So I don't want to get into too much of the politics over here as far as China goes, but there are definitely
They're going to cut off your internet.
Right. So like, there's definitely cost to the way that things are run over here. But I think what is ignored sometimes is, well, okay, but what are the benefits? You know what I'm saying? And I think this was a time there's not usually a global pandemic happening every day, but this is a time where you could kind of see like, wow, the efficiency what the government was able to do to save people's lives was incredible. And yes, that means that individuals had less freedom. Like in one day, it became illegal to go out in our province without a mask on, like right away, you know? So that means less freedom. Like I don't
And
get
you
to
guys
choose.
already have like a mask wearing culture
Right.
over there as well.
Yeah, and it wasn't a political thing. Part of that is because we don't have two parties. We don't have any parties like in China, like, you know, so how can you be political about it? So I know the downsides to this, but I think what was interesting was to actually see the positives to this and see how unifying it was in such a horrible situation. And then conversely, like comparatively, seeing what's happening in the United States is just so confusing. Like, I just don't get it. Like, I honestly don't get it.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different things going on too that are like confounding it. You know, like we're in an election year.
Yes.
We're
Mm-hmm.
heating up with China, you know, getting a little frisky on some Cold War status.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's interesting times to be alive.
Mm-hmm. So why do you think that like the COVID situation is so political? Like, really, like what makes it
Well,
so
I think it's just like the overall atmosphere that we've, you know, been increasingly getting to since, I mean, really it started before Trump, but like when Trump came, everything was just like you're either Trump or you're against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And like for me, that's not like how I do my politics. Like I'm much more about like policies and values. And I really
Mm-hmm.
think it really, like, this anti-Trump politics is a disservice to us
Mm-hmm.
overall. And it really is just like a symptom of the duopoly. Like you said, this two-party system, it's like proving to be no better than a one-party system, because that's really what it is. They're two sides of the same coin. So I think it's just kind of like the times that we're in, that it's so political.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're right, there was like those moments, there was like a couple of moments when everybody was like, wow, like I appreciate my family, like I appreciate that I have like a place to stay and some food in the fridge kind of
Mm-hmm.
moments. And then we just, you know, devolved and everybody got cooped up like house sick, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Americans were, I mean, and also too, like, I don't know if I'm totally convinced that America's response was like so much worse than all of these other places.
Well, it's kind of like I said, like in economics, you're always going to have trade-offs. I think
Right.
freedom and like the different kinds of values that did, I think, end up costing kind of like maybe response times and then like flattening the curve, those are still values. You know, it's just like how much, like, you know, how
I
much do you
love
want to
that.
pay for that, you know? And
Mm.
I don't think that's something that like one person can say for everyone. Like everyone's going to have a different opinion on how much they would value those choices. Like it's the same thing with, I think, a lot of issues, like, you know, guns, like guns are going to cost you, but they're also, you know, freedom has a lot of value. So like how much are you willing to pay for that? And I think in the American culture, we're willing to pay a lot for those freedoms. That's who we are, you know,
Right.
as a, you know.
I really like your, it's like an economics approach, but it's like kind of like an actuarial approach. Like you're weighing out those costs and those benefits and you're making a calculated decision. And I think we're missing a lot of that, like nuance from the conversation. It's either like, no, we have, every single life matters, there's no value on a life. And it's like, okay, like that's nice rhetoric, you know what I mean? But it's not true.
This
It's
is why
like,
they call economics the dismal science, because we put that like value, like number values on life, and we don't say like, okay, if we reopen schools, if one child dies, like that's totally like makes the whole decision not acceptable. Like there's going to be pros, there's going to be cons. Thinking about the pros and cons and talking about them, sometimes it is sad because you are dealing with really important things, very valuable things, but not letting your whole state really access quality education, if the cost of that is so big, it's not worth it, you know? Like, humans can do amazing things. We can do whatever we want to do. I talk to my kids and I tell them, do you think that we could get rid of all pollution? Do you think that's possible? And they usually say like, no, probably not. And I'm like, yes, we 100% can. Easily, like, it's not easily, but simply. We have simple solutions to get rid of all pollution, but we don't want to. That's why we have pollution. If we wanted to get rid of all pollution, get rid of all humans. Done. Like, but is that
I was like, where are you going with this? I'm like thinking, I'm like, all right, like, you know, we could get some pollution down, but I'm like, yo, even when they were like hunter-gatherers and like just farming, like they polluted a lot and caused a lot of different erosion and stuff. So I'm like, but then you get rid of all humans. Okay, you on your Bill Gates now.
Such a huge cost for, like, you know, a benefit that wouldn't even be a benefit anymore if we took that direction. So it's not about these like extreme measures, these extreme, we want no pollution, we want no one to die. Like, here's the thing, we want to do as much as we can with our limited resources. So we have to be efficient and we have to think about what are the pros and cons of the decisions that we're making. And I think the hard part is, in the United States, with something like this, people's decisions aren't only affecting themselves. What I decide to do is actually going to affect other people. And that's why this is complicated, because really in the United States, there's what we generally tend to try to do is, if it only affects you, it's fine. But if it affects other people, that's when we need to have some regulations and stuff like that. And now everything you do in life, going to school, going to work, everything you do affects someone else. So now it's really complicated.
Yeah, and I think too, we've kind of gotten to this place where we need to remember that the individual has a key role to play in that collective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think oftentimes we kind of put like the individual and collective at like two different ends of the spectrum, but I really see them as being like super interwoven. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're generally not going, or you're not reliably going to produce strong individuals unless they come from a strong community. And
Right.
You're not going to have a strong community unless it's made up of a good deal of reliable individuals. And we just can't have that conversation with enough nuance. So, but I have faith because of this conversation right here.
You're cutting out a little bit.
Oh, I was just saying that I have faith because of this conversation that we're having right here.
Oh yeah.
And I think that you have a really important voice to add to this conversation. I think, like, your demeanor, you know what I mean? Like, cause I'm all like, like, you have a beautiful face, like, oh my God, you know? And then versus you're much like more reserved, like a little bit, but like so eloquent. And I just feel like sometimes where I miss people, where people are like, yo, this girl is like too much crazy intense, like, you're gonna come in and like those are your people to say the message, because I feel like we're saying so much of the same thing, but we use that different language, and it's so important.
Yeah, and I think we need everyone, because what's the most important thing is just getting the ideas out there and having conversations. I don't know how to fix the solution or what's going to happen, but I think more talking is better. And I think this like cancel culture, where if you ask a question or you are just kind of like thinking for a moment and you don't jump on these like things right away, is really bad for helping people grow and come to your side. Like, it's bad strategy, even, like, you know, even just from the point of like, you want to win, like you want to get more people on board with yours. Don't shut them down if they're like not all the way on board yet. Like, help them, have conversations with them, and just allow people as much as you can, allow people to have as much choice and freedom as you can.
Yeah. And I think too, like recognizing like that there's so much beauty in a variety of opinions. Like I wouldn't want to be in a room with a bunch of people who thought exactly like me. I love to have a spectrum of people who are like a few degrees away from me, people who are all the way out there, people who are all the way over there, people who are way up there. Sometimes I like to join them up there, you know. But we got to keep having these conversations. So maybe, you know, like we can do a check-in again in like a month or something.
Yeah.
Just to see what's going on.
Really interested in seeing what's going to happen in the United States. Because like in China, we know that we're going to be able to get back to normal school in a couple weeks. We're starting. Wow, summer's almost over. But it's not even a question, but because things are safe here. But you know what? We're paying for that is a huge price. Our borders are closed. If I leave China, I lose my job. You know, like that's scary things. But at the same time, like cost versus benefit, you know, like we have a country that's pretty much safe, you know, from COVID right now. But that's a huge price to pay, you know. So I'm interested to see like what's going to happen in the United States. What are their decisions going to be on that like spectrum, on that continuum of like freedom versus like safety, pretty much.
And as am I, and we will be here to talk about them. And I'm just sitting here thinking like all this cost benefit, like your husband is either the luckiest man in the world or like the I don't know, or you give him the hardest time ever. You'd be like, like hold on, let's see what the cost benefit of this is. I can see that all the time.
I would say it's probably both at the same time.
No, I'm all about it. So when things open back up, you know, I'm gonna be coming out that way.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll meet in Malaysia.
I don't know like what you can do as far as like filming in the classroom, but like I love to see like in people's classrooms, like on the micro level, like what's going on with you know, because everyone's experiences are so different. And I do want to say that like everything I'm sharing today about how the school took care of us, that's me, one person in China. My experience is not representative of everyone here. I know people in China who they lost their jobs because of this, you know, and who didn't have the support that our school gave us too. But yeah, I want to see like what happens in the States.
All right. Well, we'll keep seeing. Thanks, Elizabeth, for everything, and we're gonna see you soon.
It was really good. It's nice chatting with you.
So a lot of great information. And not only does Elizabeth have just such an amazing like personality, and like I said, if you don't know her family, you definitely gotta go check them out on YouTube, 7 in All. Link is in the description down below. But just her whole energy, and again, that framework that she uses to assess the advantages and the disadvantages and why one population of people might do something different from another. And I really think that this is the framework we need to be using to assess those risk factors in staying at home, doing a hybrid, going full in person, and it's not going to look the same for every district across the nation. So just a little food for thought as more and more schools are coming off summer break and reopening, some doing the fully online thing, some doing hybrid, some actually going fully in school, like a conversation I had with a teacher from Virginia where her school is making it happen, full all day in-person instruction. So let me know in those comments down below, what's the situation panning out to look like in your district? What are the politics? How is that balancing act between the risk factors and the advantages and the disadvantages playing out? How do you feel personally about getting back out there? Let me know all that in the comment section down below. And of course, if you haven't yet, I still love your beautiful face, but what I'm really gonna need you to do is hit that like button. If you're new here, subscribe, hit that bell so you can notify every time I drop a video. Like I said, I got a bunch of stuff coming your way, including that conversation with the teacher from Virginia. I have a video coming about the research, the actual research that is out there about coronavirus and reopening schools, and just a lot more great content coming your way. And I'm just gonna say one more time, we're getting into the school year. If you could spare $1 or $2, donate to the work that I'm doing in my classroom with my students. Those links are also in the description down below. Follow our ventures on Instagram at Making History with Miss Edmonds. Also follow the Class Disruption Instagram and Twitter, because we're always having fun conversations over there. And until next time, you know what I need you to do. Stay foolish, y'all.